Hello and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Mayer, bringing you another episode filled with insights, innovation, and inspiration. Before we dive into today's exciting episode, a quick reminder to check us out at manufacturingculturepodcast.com. Don't forget, you can also connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to keep the conversation going. Today's episode is proudly brought to you by Speroni, the champions in precision tooling, whose support makes this show possible. Also, a big shout out to our partner, Shop Floor Coffee, because what's a good discussion without great coffee? Now, into the heart of today's episode. We're thrilled to have a very, very special guest with us, Susanne Mariga, a powerhouse in the world of finance and a guiding light for entrepreneurs aiming for the stars. Susanne is not just any CPA, she's a fractional CFO and a maestro in high net worth strategies for 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs, making magic with the Profit First system. Leading the Mariga Group, recognized by none other than Goldman Sachs' 10,000 Small Businesses and honored as the 2021 Profit First Professional Firm of the Year, Susanne is a force to be reckoned with. Her accolades don't stop there. She's also the recipient of the 2011 Houston Minority Supplier Development E10 Award. But wait, there's more. Susanne's insights have been featured in the Houston Business Journal, MBE Magazine, and numerous other media outlets. She's also the author of Kirkus Reviewed and Publishers Weekly Editor's Pick, Profit First for Minority Business Entrepreneur Enterprises. Easy for me to say, geez. Which was a collaboration with Mike Michalowicz. And if that's not enough, she's also the host of the Profit Talk podcast. Her journey is as impressive as her credentials. Before founding the Mariga Group, Susanne honed her skills at Arthur Andersen LLP and KPMG, one of the big four firms. Her unique blend of industry knowledge and personal experience in growing a small business enables her to craft bespoke, profit-first business plans that spell success and financial stability for her clients. As a certified profit-first professional at the mastery level, Susanne's passion is helping entrepreneurs maximize profits, grow their businesses, and save dollars through savvy tax strategies. So buckle up, listeners, as we embark on a journey filled with financial wisdom and entrepreneurial insights. Connect with Susanne at SuzanneMariga.com and let's get this conversation started. Stay tuned and let's learn how to make our businesses not just survive, but thrive. Hello, Susan. Welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy that your firm reached out. I think this is a great connection, not only for me personally, but for our listeners and viewers if they're watching us on YouTube. So I'm really excited to have you here today. You're a big deal. And I love having big deals on the show. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Suzanne, I want to kick it off. Tell us your story. How did you get from where you were in your life to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I grew up in the world of accounting. Is what I tell everybody. My dad was a CPA. He had a firm for over 30 years.
Wow.
And he actually hired me when I was 14 to work in his firm. Free babysitting, right? Um, he hired me as a bookkeeper. And so, he taught me how to do bookkeeping. He taught me how to do taxes. And it was interesting because when I went to college, it just accounting came easy. I
Sure.
literally could, it was like everybody was learning stuff and I was just getting a review. And it ended up being a great career. I ended up going to Anderson, which at the time was the number one firm in the country. And later on, ended up starting my own practice. And we ended up doing extremely great. We ended up being a Goldman Sachs 10,000, getting some of the largest government contracts in the country.
Wow.
And we ended up actually selling that practice a couple of years ago.
Really?
And yes, and it allowed me to really go out and do the work in the world that I really have a passion for, which is really working more in a boutique fashion with businesses that are scaling and growing. and implementing something called the profit first method. And Jim, I'm not sure the audience knows about profit first or not, but um,
Give us some background on profit first, because I've got some questions, but this will set the groundwork for it.
yeah, profit first was a game changer. It was a game changer for my business. It's been a game changer for many of my clients that have worked with me. And what it is, it's a literally a cash management methodology that was created by author Mike Michalowicz. And what we do is we take our profit first, literally take our profit first. And I think one of the things that we as business owners run into is we love what we do, right? We love the world of accounting. We love
Absolutely.
making those widgets, right? And the world just needs one more widget, right? And the reality is we love what we do so much. It's our natural gift in many cases is that we would make it for free, right? We
Yeah,
would do our work for free because just producing that widget just gives us joy, right?
absolutely.
And the reality is, unfortunately that happens, right? We hear about the Small Business Administration telling us that half of businesses close within 3 years of starting, and at the end of 10 years, like less than 20% are left standing.
Yeah,
And what happens is they run out of cash, right? They love what they do so much that they don't have anything to show for it. And I can't tell you, Jim, how many times I've met entrepreneurs and they pay themselves $100,000 a year and they keep paying themselves $100,000 a year 10 years later and they never progress. And what Profit First does is, we're going to reward you based upon your growth. And so what that means is, you're going to have a bank account where all your money is collected. And then twice a month, we're going to allocate to different bank accounts based on that purpose. So one of the first bank accounts that we're going to allocate to is a bank account called Profit. I'm literally going to allocate a percentage of your revenue straight to Profit. So you're going to be profitable day one,
I
like
love it.
literally day one. No matter what happened in the past, you're going to be profitable. Um, we're also going to allocate to owner's pay, right? Because a lot of times I ask my clients, like, who's your MVP? Who's your most valued player? Who's the most important person on your team that if they walked off tomorrow, your business wouldn't be unable to run? And they always say, oh, it's Mike, it's Susie, it's Carl, right? But they never say it's themselves, right? But I'll
Right.
tell you, Jim, the day you walk off this show, there is no more show, right? There is no more show. You are the
Right.
MVP. And for you guys who are listening out there as entrepreneurs, you are the MVP. You are the lifeblood of your company. And so you need to be bringing home a paycheck that commensurates the work that you're doing in the world. And so
Yeah,
we're going to allocate a percentage of that revenue to owner's pay. So it's going to go up as your business continues to succeed. Now, the next account that we're going to allocate to is an account called tax, because there's no point in being successful and then at the end of the year wondering how am I going to pay for last year's taxes for this year's
absolutely.
money, right? We're not going to be
Yep.
financing our IRS debt. And so what's going to happen is we're going to allocate to the tax accounts every single month. Also, we're going to
Wow.
allocate a percentage of our revenue to taxes. So we're not worried about what's going to happen in terms of how we're going to pay our taxes. Taxes are a part of success, right?
Yeah.
If you buy that Bugatti, you have that obligation, right? You made the money. So we're gonna use some sound tax strategy, but the reality is you're gonna have a tax burden. So let's go ahead and at least prepare for it, right? And if
Sure.
we don't use all the money, you just get another bonus at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And that last bank account that we're gonna create is something called an operating expense account or OPEX account. And what that means is after I funded my profit, after I funded my owner's pay, after I funded my tax account, right? That's all that I have left is my operating expense. And so what I'm doing here now is I'm working with something called Pareto principle, meaning that the more I have of something, the more I'm going to use of it, right?
Yeah.
I think of the example of going to that buffet, right? We've all been there, shamefully to that Golden Corral, walked in and I don't know about you, Jim, but I've never walked out of there proud, right? Even when I'm
Never.
diet eating, never walk out proud, right? And
It's
the
almost a
problem is,
goal to not walk out proud, right? I mean, you don't go there thinking, when I leave here, I want to be proud of myself. You walk in there saying, I'm going to do things to my body that normally I don't do, right?
oh, definitely. You definitely don't walk out with just a salad. Um, and the problem with Golden Corral is they have tons of plates, right? They have plates on each side. They've got it in the middle. You can literally just turn around. There's a plate there. You've got a salad buffet. You've got main course. You've got a dessert and a million options. And so what happens is you eat more, right? You eat more because that's
Yeah.
what's available. Versus, let's say you and I were going to go to an hors d'oeuvre dinner, right? We're going to go networking, we're going to have social pressure. The plates are going to be 5 inches wide, right? We're going to eat a lot differently, right? We're
Yeah.
going to eat a lot differently. We may take one skewer, right, and a glass of wine, but we're not going to be eating like we're at the Golden Crown. Now, the food may be in plenty, but
Yeah.
because the plate size is different, we're going to eat a lot differently. And that's the same thing that it works in Profit First, because now we've created a smaller plate. We've created a bank account just for operating expenses, right? We've already taken our profit first. We've already taken our owner's pay. We've already reserved for taxes. And what's happening is we're creating an illusion of scarcity. We're going to use less because there is less available, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why profit first works, is it works of our natural human psychology.
I love that. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody equate finances to buffets versus like networking meals, but that was an amazing analogy, Suzanne. I loved it. Because you're right. At Golden Corral, there's thousands of plates and they're massive in size. You go to a networking event, it could be a tiny little 3 inch plate to a 5 inch plate. You get a couple of hors d'oeuvres, you put it on, you get your cocktail napkin. It's a much different experience. And you walk out feeling maybe a little bit better about yourself. So that's what you do financially for folks.
Exactly, exactly. We create an illusion of scarcity. Now, there's more that gets involved. Obviously, we're going to do some budgeting for our
Yeah.
manufacturing folks out there. There's some things that we have to do to create that illusion of scarcity, even in inventory purchases, because I think that
Hmm.
cost of goods sold, that inventory can easily get out of hand. So we're going to
Yeah.
create another bank account called materials and stuff for those type of projects. But um, definitely, that it's all about creating that illusion of scarcity, creating
I
those
love it.
boundaries.
I love it. So, Suzanne, this is the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about culture at least a little bit. Um, you've worked with a wide range of organizations, from small 1 and 2 person shops all the way up, or organizations, not just shops, to those 7 and 8 figure companies. How do cultural differences look between the companies that take your advice, the profit first mentality advice, versus ones that don't? Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, Jen, that makes sense. I mean, first of all, because of the boundaries, I think that the owners are less stressed, right? I think
Mm,
management is less stressed because they're able to budget, they're able to, a lot of them have set up different accounts like payroll accounts, so they're not worried about how am I going to make payroll. They've got the inventory control because they've got an inventory account now where they can make purchases. So that fear of how am I making payroll, that stress just isn't there, which is a really good thing. The second thing is when you're operating a company that is that profitable, there's a level of efficiency that's really required.
okay.
And so it's important that you have a team, right, that's happy to be there, that's gifted in the work that they do, right?
Yeah.
And so they're excited to come to work. And so building culture becomes critical because, Jim, you and I know when you put somebody that's in their zone of genius, that is doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, right? That person is like winning every single day. And when they're winning, they're happy, right? And that A
Absolutely.
player works like nine C players, right? They're cranking it. And so it's costing the company less. They have people that are happy on their job. They've got, these daily stand-ups where everybody's sharing their wins, right? To get more efficient. And versus like a group of C players that are like, oh man, like am I gonna get caught for not pulling my weight today, right? It's just a
Absolutely.
whole different culture, right, with that. And so, again, to optimize that efficiency, company culture and putting the right people in the right places and hiring those A players is extremely important.
Absolutely. And so how do those sound financial strategies impact the ability to hire the right person for the right role, to build that culture that works best for each company?
So where I see people mess up especially in the world of manufacturing, is gross margins, right? They're looking at, okay, I make this widget and I got to compete with every other widget maker that's out there.
Yeah.
And the first thing that they do is they squeeze their margins, right? They lower their price is what happens. But what happens when you lower your price? You have less margins, right? Gross margins is revenue less your cost of goods sold equals gross margins. When you lower your gross margins, right, you have less money to spend on rents. You have
Hmm.
less money to hire the best and brightest people, right?
Right.
You have less money to buy the right equipment that you need to manufacture optimally. You can't upgrade when new technology comes out. And so one of the first things that becomes really important is, I can't compete upon price, right? Because one of the first things we learn is that when you compete upon price, the winner is free, right?
Yeah.
That's the race towards the bottom, the race towards free. And
Yeah.
and nobody wins in the race towards free,
No,
right? Except maybe a
absolutely not.
nonprofit, but I'm not sure if they're even winning, right?
No,
Um,
I work for one, and that they do not win even then.
And so it's really important to really position yourself to create those margins. Like why, I'm a lady, right, Jim? So no shame about purses, right? Um, is there a difference really between a Louis Vuitton purse versus a great Target purse? I mean, really, is there a difference, right? At the end of the day, or a purse that you get from the outlet?
Well,
Um,
it's the scarcity. I mean, it goes back to the scarcity mindset, right? That's why a Louis Vuitton or a Tory Burch or something like that is more than a purse from Target or Walmart or Big Lots. It's just there are less of them made, so it's a scarcity issue, right? Supply and demand.
Exactly. And but at the same time, that's a controlled scarcity, right? It's a
Got it.
controlled positioning, right? And so it's about what needs to happen to increase those margins. How do I need to position myself, right? In order to command those margins, and what am I going to be known for becomes
Yeah,
really important with that.
I get that. I get that. Um, Awesome. So let's talk about your book, the one that you co-wrote with, and I apologize, Michael Michalowicz. Is that his name?
You actually got it.
I got it. Third time's a charm. Woohoo! So in that book, you focus primarily on minority entrepreneurs, right? So what unique challenges do minority entrepreneurs face when it comes to culture, when it comes to financial, et cetera, et cetera?
So, Profit First for Minority Business and Enterprises, just like you mentioned, it was a book that was co-written with Mike McCallowitz, who authored Profit First. And, it was a book that was geared specifically towards minority business enterprises. And the reason why is a lot of times as people of color, right? We're the first ones in our family to go to college if we've gone to college. First ones to run a successful business, right? Or running a business.
Yeah,
And I think I was lucky because I had my dad, but there are a lot of people that are not lucky to
yeah.
have had something passed down in terms of a skill set. And really this book was about creating a know-how, creating a book of everything that I wish I knew or the things that I knew that
Ah,
really helped me in my business.
yeah.
And creating that gift of what happens if I had to leave something in a time capsule that could help the next person out, help that world out. What would I want to leave, right? And this was my book. That was the reason why I left my book. Now there's a philanthropy part to it too, and that for every book that's sold, $1 goes to Hope Worldwide, where we send girls to school in Zimbabwe. And every year
Yeah,
we filled up a classroom. I'm so proud of that.
that's
All these
fantastic.
girls that are going to school in Zimbabwe because of the book proceeds that have happened.
So
But
everybody, buy the book. I'll link it in the show notes. Buy the book.
even if you're not a minority, buy the book, right?
Buy
It's a
the
great
book.
book. But it's about really creating the skill set that we don't know. And it was important because you know, when I first got my first job outside of college, I went to work for Anderson in Chicago. And I remember like taking my interview trip up there. And I was talking to some of my future colleagues, and I was like, so like I don't know much about Chicago. Where should I live?
Hmm.
And my colleagues were amazing. They were looking out for my best interests, and they were like, okay, you can live in Lakeview, Lincoln Park, maybe Gold Coast, but whatever you do, don't live in the south side of Chicago, is what they told me.
Mm,
And so what I did was I moved to Lincoln Park, right, Lakeview, right off of Diversity and Sheridan, for anybody's familiar with the Chicago
yeah.
area, into a high rise where you look out and you can't see where the sky begins and the lake ends. It was just blue when you look out.
Beautiful.
And everybody drove a Jetta, and everybody looked like Barbie and Ken. And it was interesting because one day I said, I just want to see Chicago. I want to see Chicago for what it is. And I am bored, and I am going to get on this bus, and I'm going to take it where the good Lord takes me, and I'm going to get out and catch the next bus wherever, and I'm going to go wherever that takes me, right?
That's amazing.
I did. And so I took this bus, and it took me along Michigan Avenue, and it stopped right at around Michigan and Roselle is where the bus stopped. And I got on this other bus, and it continued down Michigan Avenue. But what I noticed was, you're going down Michigan Avenue, you're seeing all these great stores, like you're talking about your Tory Burke and all these fancy stores. And suddenly the world started changing, right? You start
Yeah.
not seeing the fancy stores, you start seeing the shopping carts that are being pushed down the road. You're seeing the buildings that have the glass broken out. It looks like it didn't
Hmm.
happen yesterday, it happened maybe a few years ago, but there was no money to
Replace it.
recreate or rebuild that
Yeah.
infrastructure. And you started to see the food deserts. You didn't see the grocery stores. You saw the corner stores, but not the grocery stores. And one of the things that puzzled me was like, how can you have a city where literally this one street is the border, where you've got, you know, massive commerce happening, and then literally nothing happening in this other side but poverty. And it occurred to me, how do you get rid of that is by creating healthy, profitable businesses, right? Because when I have a healthy business in my neighborhood, that means I'm going to hire my neighbors,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
My neighbors' children are going to see what mom and dad does. They're going to see what I do. And they're going to go, okay, I can do this too. I can be a doctor, lawyer, or accountant, or manufacturer, right? And so really the key to creating equality in finances was about creating equal opportunities in every single neighborhood.
Love it.
And that's why Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises is so important, because I think as people of color, first of all, there's the guilt of being the first, right? And we want to bring everybody else up too, which is a great thing to have. But
Yeah.
sometimes that means creating a company filled with family and friends,
Yeah.
which are very difficult to manage,
Absolutely.
versus putting people in the right places,
Yep.
right? It could be buying into this access to capital theory. Like, I need to get loans, right? And
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, I can't get loans because, of the opportunities. But the reality is, you get loans based upon profitability,
Right.
right? People invest in companies that are profitable. I sold a profitable accounting firm, right? That allowed me to retire at 46 years old. And it's about creating businesses that are profitable, right? It's not a loan that's going to save you or the man that's going to save you. You are going to save you by you're going to be the hero of your story by creating a profitable business.
Love it.
And that book tells you how to do it.
I
And
love that.
so that is the reason why I wrote that book.
Wow. That's an awesome story, right? Um, and you're right. I mean, I'm in Phoenix. We have that street that divides the nice stores from the food deserts, right? Where you go from an Aldi's or a Safeway or whatever every mile and a half to where you've got corner stores and fast food, right? Um, the guest that came out the week before your, or that will be released the week before your episode, we talked about something similar. He's up in Milwaukee and uh, grew up in a rough neighborhood in Milwaukee, right? But his vision on how to build his community from within has just, it was goosebump inducing. So uh, maybe I'll connect you and Courtney after we're done recording here. Um, Susanne, along those lines, there are some challenges that minority entrepreneurs face in getting funding. What are some strategies that minority entrepreneurs or even young people or mid-career people who want to go out and start their own shop, what are some things that they could do to make that first step, to go from making, $30 an hour, $25 an hour, with an idea of, man, I really want to buy a 3-axis machine, I want to convert the electricity in my garage, or I know of an abandoned building down the road, I'd love to rebuild my neighborhood by putting a machine shop in there. What steps can they take to make that a reality?
Right. So it's interesting because, I would always I love that concept of bootstrapping, right? And, because reality is it's hard to get a loan if you're if you don't have the track record, right?
Yeah.
And I started my firm with $50. That was it. I remember when I went through certifications, I had to prove that I wrote a check to myself at the bank to put that into my company account. And one of the first things I bought was like a printer. As soon as I did my first tax return, I bought a printer, and then you just continue to build from there. And there is nothing wrong with starting small. I talk about one of my clients, in my book, Jade and Ed Harris. They are one of the premier leading wig manufacturers, with their
Okay.
glueless wig, and do very well, and obviously first millionaires in their families also.
Mhm.
And and they started literally, started creating wigs, and she learned it on YouTube. She literally was creating a wig for herself, and
That's amazing.
because she had personally experienced some hair loss, and she said, okay, let me go ahead and learn how to make this wig for myself on YouTube. And she was working in a shoe store on Madison Avenue at the time, wearing this wig she manufactured for herself. And one of her clients was losing her hair because she was going through chemotherapy, and she said, can I have that wig? Can I buy that wig off of your head right now? Right.
Literally off of your head.
And that's how the virgin hair fantasy was started. Literally, was the woman bought the wig off of her head, and because she needed to feel beautiful that day.
Yeah.
And so it's important, first of all, to go, what is the need? A lot of times people start businesses because of a passion, but what is the need in the world, right?
Mm.
Like who knew that this wig that she bought for her own self or created for her own self was a prayer being answered for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And apparently a lot of people. And so, first of all, where's the demand at? And start small, right? It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing, right?
Mm.
Start small. It might be you're buying and reselling, right? Maybe you're
Yeah.
buying overseas and reselling it, and instead of doing it in house, right? And maybe you're getting orders up front based upon a prototype. I love deposits up front, right? That's really important, right? If you want to put an order, put in a deposit, make it at least 50%, make sure it covers cost of goods sold, right?
Yeah.
Don't get into the business of giving line of credits to people, right?
Yeah.
We ship upon payment, and you want to get into, so it's really creating boundaries, right? Creating boundaries of, I cannot afford to finance you.
Yeah.
And so you have to pay deposit, and then you pay the upfront deposit, and then build from there. Decide, okay, now that I'm running a lean machine, and I've got my profit percentages, if I want to grow, I need to go ahead and create a budget that I can continue to reinvest, right? For that growth, for that to happen. And how much, and I call the seed money. What is my seed money? What am I willing to part with in order to grow this business? I'm looking at my advertising spend. I'm looking for ROI on my advertising spend. I know in Profit First, we like to see a 10x
Yeah.
on advertising spend. And everybody's like, what, 10x? 10x? I'm like, yes, 10x, because you still got to buy your materials, your raw materials. You still got to hire the guy that's going to put together the widget, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, if you've got a facility, you got to pay that rent, right? And so, you have to build all that in there, and account for all that. That's going to be really important with that. And so that doesn't even start to cover the advertising, right? The advertising needs to cover all that, plus the revenue, plus the profit, plus the tax, plus the people to make the goods, right? And so
Yep.
advertising needs to present a 10x, and you can't just let it bleed. You can't just put on Google ads. You gotta make sure those Google ads are working, right? And
Yeah.
you're evaluating the effectiveness of those Google ads. You gotta know your cost per lead, right? Your cost per client acquisition. And and those things change over time. Algorithms change, right? Facebook algorithms change. And you gotta have the procedures in place to make sure that you're capturing those changes are happening.
Yeah. I love it. Uh, Suzanne, let's switch gears a little bit. You're now a fractional CFO, correct?
That's correct.
So, as a fractional CFO, how big of a role, I guess, does company culture play into your decision to work with an organization? And if it does play a role, how do you assess the company culture within prospective clients of yours?
I'll be honest with you, a lot of times when I go in, company culture is a problem, right? Um, you know, and that's the reason why profitability isn't there. They've allowed things to happen too long, right?
Yeah.
There hasn't been crucial conversations along the way when it comes to having performance reviews, or maybe they don't even have a performance review process that's tied to
Right.
raises.
Yeah.
That happens in even multi-million dollar companies. That
Ah,
happens. And so usually one of the big problems with profitability is culture, right? Someone just doesn't want to fire somebody. Um, they wonder what somebody's actually doing on their job every day.
yeah.
They've got to be doing something. We can't figure out what it is, but they've got to be doing something. So they keep that person on with that. And usually when it starts is it's creating that process of how do we do evaluations? What's broken? Do we do 90-day improvement plans where we're talking about those things? Are we hiring people that light up when they get to come to work every day, right?
Absolutely.
How do we know this person lights up? How do we know that's their passion, right?
Yeah.
Do they have signs? Did they do this before? Did they go to school for it? Have they invested their own money to build this talent that they
Yeah.
want to do, right? And so it's really, honing in on culture, but culture is extremely important, Joe.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, do you have any specific examples of when a change in company culture led to a massive financial turnaround for an organization that you worked with?
Yeah, that's pretty much every company. If you guys want to go to my website, SusanneMariga.com, we actually have clients that talk about their success stories where they've become the first millionaire in their family or they bought their own farm. Just things that they've been able to do because of, profit first. But it definitely is culture. And then it's not only that, it's not just a do it and fix it and leave it. It's something you have to continue to reevaluate, right? Part of it is setting up KPIs, meaning, there are many different KPIs that can be set up
Yeah.
when you're looking at productivity, because you have to hold people accountable, right? And you have to, you know, make it a win, right? I
Yeah.
remember when our accounting firm, we would play like we had this little teeny weeny volleyball that was like one of those like beach balls, really light air. And we would literally play this little game of volleyball. And the goal was just to keep the ball in the air. How many taps can we just pass it?
Yeah.
And one, you get to really know your coworkers, who's athletic, who's not, who played volleyball in high school. And every day, just the goal was just to do a little bit better than what we did before. So if we got 20 taps today, our goal is to at least get 21 taps. And we're just
Got
going to
it.
keep this ball in the air and pass it to each other. And it's about working together and creating a collaborative culture where we want to see everybody win.
I love it. I absolutely love that. Um, did you play volleyball?
I did not play volleyball.
Just had to ask. Um, so you also are host of a great podcast, Profit Talk, right? Um, what are some insights that you've gained from your podcast that could or do directly relate to our listeners here in the manufacturing industry?
So with the Profit Talk podcast, it is a profit first podcast. So we talk profit first. We dive more into it. We bring in guest speakers that have different um, specialties. Like we brought in franchise attorneys that talk about other ways to grow your business. We bring in people that are actually implementing profit first in their business. And and so always, that fact that you get to glean from other people's experiences are great. You get to meet great people too as a podcast host, which is always fun.
It's a blast.
With that, yeah. But it's definitely a great conversation of the practicalities of implementing profit first.
I love it. Awesome. Um, Second to last question, Suzanne. What are three things that manufacturers can implement from a financial standpoint that will improve their company culture internally?
Hmm. So first thing I would say, and then I'm going to talk for just commonalities that I see that
Yeah.
happens. One is um, tying raises or any type of increase with performance in a very obvious way,
Yeah.
meaning that if you got a 3% raise, this is exactly why. I know one of the things that we do is we have a scoring system it's called a 6-point scoring system.
Okay.
Number six, if you are ranked a six in a particular area, like communication, for example, that means that you are about to be promoted. You are a stellar. Okay, stellar. If you're a one, we're probably doing a counseling out plan, right?
Yeah.
This is not the place for you. Three, you're average. Most people we want to see around a 4 to 5 is where we
Yeah.
want to see most people at. And every category is rated. So quality of work, quantity of work, communication. We're given specific examples where you did well. We're doing specific examples of where you can improve that happened.
Yep.
And if you are scoring a six on average, then you're getting a 6% raise.
Got it.
If you're scoring a one, you're getting a 1%. If you're scoring a three on average, you're getting three. And so what we've done is we've literally
Interesting.
linked performance directly with the raises that they're receiving for that year. And so they know, hey, if I want a 6%, these are the things I need to work on because these are the specific incidents that brought me down. And it allows them to win. It allows everybody to win, right? When you know the rules, you can win. And so it literally outlines the rules for how do I win next year, right? How do
That's
I win in the
so
next 90 days?
that's so like stupid simple. I can't believe it, but it's genius. I love that idea.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. What's number two?
So number two, I would say from a culture perspective is creating a culture where, we share our wins. We share our wins, right? And, if something good happens in the owner's situation, this is what happened, and I want to share this. This is the impact that you made upon the world. Like I shared with you about the virgin hair, this made this cancer patient feel beautiful, right?
Absolutely.
This is where we want from a profit first perspective, our client just went out and bought his farm, and he's got donkeys running around now. When we first met him, like he was running at a loss and making
Yeah.
50,000, right? And that was his win, but that's our win because we as a team contributed to that win.
Yeah.
So sharing those stories where, if a team member exceeded deadline, or they increased production or we hit a sales goal, share that win, share that win, go out to lunch, celebrate, make it a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Because the more you celebrate something, the more you get of it, right? There's
Absolutely.
that law of abundance that's important with that.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. What's number three, if there is one? I'm not saying there has to be, but if there is one, what would number three be?
I would say creating a culture of efficiency,
Oh,
meaning that and feedback. And what I mean by that is, it is normal that we give feedback. It is normal that we tell you how we can improve. It's not a thing that's directed towards you. It's just something that we do. We see something wrong, we're going to give feedback, right? We celebrate feedback. We have a culture of continuous improvement, meaning that how we are today, even though it's great, is it going to be how we are tomorrow? We're going to be even better.
yeah.
And so creating that sports mentality of we are going to improve, continuous improvement, I think is really important.
I love it. All right. Very last question, Suzanne. What haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience today?
Sure. So thank you, Jim, for that opportunity. One of the things I would share is, a lot of times companies ask me, so how much profit should I have? How much owner's pay should I have? Right. And first of all, it's going to differ for every company. It's going to differ, right?
Yep.
Because if you're a $10 million company versus a $1 million company, your numbers are going to look completely different. If you're a $100 million company, it's going to look completely different.
Yep.
And what I have is if you go to profitmap.co, I actually have a gift for you. And if you go there, you can download a chart that will tell you based on your size what your profitability percentages should be. So, what your profit should be, what your owner's pay should be, what your tax, what your operating expense should be. Definitely check that out, and that will get you started on your profit first journey. And it's okay that you're not there today. Start 1% and just build it from there.
I love it. I'm gonna go there as soon as we're done. I know what rabbit hole I'm diving into for the rest of the day, Suzanne. Um, so thank you very much, and thank you, Suzanne, for being on today. This was a great conversation. Can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for having me.
Absolutely. And folks, that's a wrap on another fantastic episode of the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. We've just had an incredible conversation with Susanne Mariga, diving deep into this intersection of financial strategy and company culture and extracting pearls of wisdom that can transform the way manufacturers operate. From understanding the profit first system to exploring how financial acumen can drive a positive and effective workplace culture, this episode was a goldmine for anyone looking to elevate their manufacturing business to new heights. Before we sign off, a huge shout out to Speroni, the leader in tool management systems. Their commitment to precision and innovation in the manufacturing industry is simply unmatched. Speroni is not just a sponsor, they're a cornerstone at advancing manufacturing excellence. Their support is pivotal in enabling us to bring you these valuable insights and discussions to you, our amazing listeners. We're also incredibly excited to welcome our new partner, Shop Floor Coffee. It's not just another coffee brand. Shop Floor Coffee is a cause driven venture passionately supporting workforce development in manufacturing. A portion of the proceeds every time you buy is dedicated to apprenticeship and scholarship programs in advanced manufacturing. Every cup you drink contributes to a brighter future for the industry. And here's something special for any of you listeners still hanging on here at the end. Use the promo code SkillUpAZ to get 10% off your order at Shop Floor Coffee. None of that goes to us at the show. Uh, None of the proceeds go to us here at the show. It all goes to support workforce development. This is your chance to not only savor exceptional coffee, but also to play a big part in skilling up the next generation of manufacturing professionals. It's a win-win, relishing great coffee while fostering the future of manufacturing. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't hesitate to share it with your friends, colleagues, your grandma, your boss, or anyone else passionate about finances, manufacturing, or culture. Your shares help us reach more people and continue to deliver the engaging and informative content that you love. Also, take a moment to rate and review their show. Your insights help improve and assist others in finding us because every time you rate and review, it rockets us up the charts and more people find us. So then we can keep spreading key insights and inspiring stories in our industry. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll explore essentials of culture and manufacturing, offering strategies, stories, and insights that make a real difference. Keep pushing innovation, keep inspiring, and continue to cultivate a culture that propels success in the manufacturing industry. Until next time, keep the gears turning, have a great day, and keep making things.